Hi friends, welcome back. We are going to be reading Curious George at School, based on Margaret and H.A. Ray's Curious George. This week, our target strategy is monitor and clarify. That means that if a part of the story doesn't make sense, read it again. So, while one of the ways to clear up confusion or clarify is to reread the sentences, the other thing to do is think about what's happening in the story. I'm going to show you how to use this strategy as we read Curious George in School together. And our target skill is sequence of events. Many stories tell about the events in order in which they happen, and this is called sequence of events. The sequence of events is what happens first, next, last in a story. You could use a flowchart to write about the events in a story. Now, before we get started, I'm curious. What do children do at school? Well, they read books, they sing songs, they paint and draw, they write letters and words. In our story, Curious George at School, I wonder what happens at school. But before we go on, I want you to share with a partner, what do you like to learn about in school? Think about it, and then share your answers with your partner. Now let's look at the genre. Our story is a fantasy. A fantasy is a story that could not happen in real life. As you read, look for events that could not really happen or animals that act like people. Meet the creators, Margaret and H.A. Ray. Children all over the world love Curious George. The Rays books have been published in Spanish, French, Swedish, Japanese, and many other languages. Since the Rays wrote their first book about the curious little monkey, George has starred in more than 40 books, a TV show, and a movie. Our essential question is, why is going to school important? So why is it important to go to school? Well, let's think about that, and together, let's think about what we expect Curious George at School to be about. I want you to think about what events might happen in our story. Think about your own experiences. And remember, this story is a fantasy and it's going to have events in it that could not happen in real life. Remember, a fantasy might have animals acting like people. Do you see any animals on this front page that might be acting like a person? I want you to share with your friend what you think is going to happen in our story. And in the end, we'll see if you are right. Now, the reason we're doing this is to set a purpose. Good readers have a reason for reading a story, and they set a purpose for reading it. So look at the pictures in the story. Think about what you know about fantasy stories, and think about what you want to find out in this story. I'll go first. As I look at the picture on the title page, I see George, the monkey, is holding a man's hand while walking into school. I also see George has a lunchbox. I wonder what else George does at school. I want to read the story to find out what George does at school. And now it's your turn. Go ahead and pause the video and figure out what you think is going to happen in the story and set your purpose. When you're ready, go ahead and hit play. This is George. He can help a lot. George can sing. He is funny. What are some ways that the author makes George seem like a person? Why do the children think George is funny? I want to be sure that I understand the story so far. The picture shows George waving hello to the class. Why? I read, "This is George." These clues tell me that George is meeting the children in the class. He can see the paints. Mix, mix, mix a bit. Mix, mix, mix a lot. Look at the illustration on page 74 and think about what we've read so far. What do you think George is going to do with the paints? Why did the authors make George seem like a person? How would the story be different if it were a real monkey? It is a big mess. George ran. What did he find? What's the main problem in the story? Can you describe what George does to try and solve the problem? As we continue to read the next couple pages, I want you to try and use the monitor and clarify strategy on your own. In a little bit, I'm going to have you share where you use the strategy to help you understand the story better. He got a mop. He had a big job to do. No, no, it is a big, big mess. George is sad, sad, sad. Oh no, why do you think George is sad? How does George making a mess connect to part of the story where he sees the paint for the first time? Kids help him do a big job. They can help him a lot. He is not sad. What is the important event that happens on page 80-81? What clues in the story and the pictures help you understand what the word help means? You know what, friends? I'm curious how Curious George's day would have been different had he have not mixed the paints. What would he have done instead? Take turns sharing your responses with your classmates. Thanks for reading with me. See you next time.